Welcome back to Vertical Blocks, where today we're really pleased to be joined by the team from ARC, who are really building some innovative stuff for crypto and DeFi. We've got George, TJ, and Jasper with us today. So maybe starting from top right, I've got you here, George. Do you want to give a quick intro on yourself and then turn it over to your teammates?
Sure. Yeah. My name's George Fox. I'm the COO at ARC. So I cover a lot of the project management stuff and infrastructure, a lot of the less exciting parts of what I do. And I've been with the company since inception. So that's me.
Thanks,
Hey,
man.
I'm TJ Dunham, the CEO and founder of ARC. I got started in this space as a quant trader and soon fell in love with the technology and smart contracts. Just glad to be on here, Juan.
Hi guys, I'm Jasper, head of business development. I've been with the project for about a year, so pretty close to when we started off. Yeah, I'm all about partnerships and growth of the project, trying to find any way that I can innovate the company to move forwards. And yeah, really excited to be on here today and to chat with Juan.
Yeah, guys, thanks for joining us. This is, I think, great timing because throughout the series of Vertical Blocks, we've had all kinds of guests come on and speak. Some are infrastructure providers, some are running their own DeFi protocols. Others are kind of innovating outside of that, right, and providing services that are adjacent to Web3, so like analytics that have more of a SaaS type model. And that's one of the things I saw on your website, which I want to get into at some point. But just to give listeners and viewers a high level overview of what ARC is at its fundamental sort of, at a high level, what is ARC? How would you describe it?
ARC, we are a software development company. One of our main products is ARC Reactor, which is a decentralized GUI for Web3 / Developer Studio. And we also have a DeFi ecosystem. At the heart of our product, the Reactor, the idea is that development in this space right now takes too long. It's way too expensive, and there's all types of exploits waiting to happen. And that is because everyone, no matter what project you are, and no matter if you're an investor or a builder, just one little mess up or one little exploit hidden in your code could leave it open to all kinds of hacks in the future, a rug pull, anything. And the idea with ARC Reactor is to essentially build code, but do it visually. So doing what the original GUI did for personal computing, but for Web3.
Great pitch. I'm in. So just to kind of, bring this back a bit, since we have listeners from every part of the crypto ecosystem. When you say GUI, you're referring to graphical user interface, right? And making that really an easy way for people to kind of apply this no code model from Web 2, which has been already very popularized, to Web 3. Now, my question, I think, for you is when you were here at the project's inception and you were looking at problems that needed solutions, right? What exactly do you mean when you say that it still takes too long and there are exploits waiting to happen? Like, let's dig into that and how ARC resolves for those issues.
Yeah, I mean, most projects, if they're developing a simple swap or a simple NFT marketplace, it might take months because they don't have the resources that projects that are well funded have. You can't just have one or two good developers and hope that you're gonna hit your product timelines, because most people can't even afford one or two good developers in this space. So the idea was to just expedite all the timelines in this space, bring down the cost because you're not paying for as many hours, but also be able to visually identify exploits waiting to happen, look at attack vectors by the load balancing on the mapping in our reactor, and just identify things visually instead of having to read the code line by line, which is very helpful if you're forking and you're putting together a bunch of random repositories. You don't have to understand every single thing to a very intimate level. You can just look at the diagram that we provide.
And how do you foresee something like ARC changing the dynamics of of competition within the DeFi and crypto ecosystem? Like, what do you see the second and third order consequences of this being introduced into the mix to be? You know, what will it drive? What will it change? How will developer behaviors adapt to the possibility of being able to do this, right? Of being able to fork and deploy something in under an hour that already exists.
I think it's going to, it's going to be a paradigm shift, because as people use our product and anyone can just map any project out there, projects are going to have to be a lot more transparent. There's not going to be a lot of people getting away with rug pulls. There's not going to be a lot of people getting away with exploits, because if it's so easy to map, then why would someone invest in a project like that when a large percentage of the community knows there's something bad waiting to happen? And then as far as just projects in general, it's going to create a more competitive landscape even for the smaller ones, because now they don't have to have a massive development team. They can just fork a lot of big projects, and instead of understanding everything line by line and editing line by line, they'll just generate new source code using our diagrams. So they'll generate by the diagram instead of by the line. And I mean, it expedites the whole process. So I could see things moving towards more transparency in the space, as well as faster adoption, because projects are just being developed more quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think
go ahead, Jasper.
So I was just going to say, I think it's a big part of our mission from the very beginning, and all of our product offerings has been about kind of breaking down barriers to entry and making it as easy as possible, whether that's for the user or for, in the case of Reactor, the developer. And I think that, you know, the power in having a system like this where you can drag and drop any code, say from ERC, and you could deploy that code base to Phantom, pull in other aspects of other functionality, drag and drop, audit, ingest the whole thing and see it diagrammed in a matter of seconds. And in theory, deploy it to the chain. And I'll let TJ touch on the back end element of this more in a second for the developers listening. But I think the power to that and how that quickens the process and whittles it down so much, it cannot be underestimated.
Yeah, would you mind if I was actually shared my screen, Juan, so I could kind of show the process?
Please do.
Awesome. All right. 2 seconds. I'm going to log into my MetaMask. You actually access it with your wallet and with your GitHub simultaneously.
It's probably also worth mentioning a few people have a few small minor criticisms have been where you're just a forking tool. I mean, it is so much more than that. But on top of that, if you look at the space, there is significant amount of projects will have forked some element of some type of code. It's just what happens. So this is a time saving and money saving option, and it kind of levels the playing field somewhat for the like I said, TJ said, for the smaller team. So it's what we've done from the start. So
yeah, and I mean, this space is all about composability, and how can we expedite that process? Well, it's with something that makes everything more composable, essentially. So I am. Can you see my screen, Juan?
Yep, you're good.
Perfect. All right. So this is the ARC reactor. Currently, it sits on this URL. It's on a. You have to whitelist your IP address to access it. You have your contracts here. You have your compiler, which I'll talk about later. Excited to drop some alpha on this call. Your file where you can open new projects, you can edit, view. You can also import, you can export directly to GitHub as well as to different chains. But here's where it gets exciting. So I have Uniswap here. It's the token, right? This is Etherscan, and this works on scans for AVAX, for Polygon, for a bunch of different chains. But I'm going to go here. You see the contract for the token. It's about 600 lines. So I'm going to take this contract. I copy the address. I go to the reactor. I'm just going to label this uni. I paste. creating project, it's instantly mapped. Here's the Uniswap token. And now I can understand exactly what it does directly from this diagram. But if I want to get even more granular, I can understand how they connect. See on the right side how it maps as I go along? But I can also open another diagram, which is the activity level diagram. So this is for the constructor function. It's showing exactly how it connects to the rest of the code base. And if I want to change this, I can actually edit the source code directly from the diagram. So even for your guys that aren't developers, like they can appreciate this, because I'm not a developer, frankly, at least compared to my CTO. But we have our type here, index access. I'm going to change that to a Boolean, true, change the function call, string. Let's just say 26. I'm going to change the operator, and it's going to generate new source code live right now. And just boom, it's done. And what this has done, it's actually changed the source code within the Uniswap contract, the token contract. And if I want, I can keep editing. It changes the source code instantly. And when I'm ready, I can just launch to an entirely new chain. I can save it to my GitHub. I could deploy directly from the compiler. But it takes the process from, you can essentially upload anything online from any scan or GitHub itself. You can edit the source code and you can ship very quickly.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty crazy to see it in action in real time and see how it lays it out for you so clearly, especially for non-devs, right, who want to get a better understanding, as you said, TJ. I just wanted to circle back to, I guess, the bigger picture here, something that George mentioned about some unfair criticisms about, like, oh, this is just a forking tool, and at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're introducing some efficiencies to a process that already exists. I'd be curious to hear, touching on the theme of composability, like, what do you think this is going to uniquely unlock, and what are some applications of this product that you would be excited to see, that you would consider innovative rather than just a standard, copy paste clone, right? Because it can be that forking something is the beginning of something new rather than the end of the beginning and the end.
That's just the beginning of the process.
Yeah.
So let's treat it like this. This space, it's all about composability. Forking is just part of the process. With the ARC reactor, I go out to any project out there and I just get the open source code off the shelf. I put it in my shopping cart. I continue along the way. Oh, I want to build a piece of a swap. I get it off the shelf. I put it in my shopping cart. And then when I'm ready to actually develop my project, I just put the contracts right in the reactor and it auto connects them. And then when I want to change and when I want to edit functions, instead of editing line by line, I change the diagram and the logic itself. So I start from the logic and not from the syntax. And that generates the source code, and it changes the code a lot more quickly than traditional methods. And then it also maps the code itself. So do you mind if I actually show this example live?
Yes, please do.
So, so shout out to Andre. And I'm not sure if these are the legitimate contracts, but so we got the urine vaults right here off GitHub. And I'm actually going to upload contracts from GitHub directly. And I'll show you some of our audit functionality as well. So using the reactor, you're visually auditing too, which is another unique feature, because you can understand the load balancing and exactly how the logic flows. But we can also do dependency mapping, which I'm going to show you right here. So it's loaded already. Here's some of the contracts. It loads the diagrams instantly. And here we are. I believe it was base strategies. So, yeah. So in this file, you'll notice in the bottom right, there's problems. We've actually identified where dependencies don't line up and where this code doesn't point to anything. And I mean, that's another unique example. It shows exactly where it doesn't line up. It tells me not found. So if I want to fix this piece, I can add a new contract to connect these dependencies, or I can edit that in the first place so it doesn't point that way. And then you see as you go along, there's a couple more problems. There's 5 dependencies missing on this one. But that's another unique feature. So you can audit visually, you can code visually. We generate source code via diagram instead of having to type the syntax itself. So it's a lot more quick because you're starting from a logic perspective instead of a perfect syntax perspective. Yeah, I mean, I'd say with all those things combined, that's why the product packs such a punch, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, again, seeing it for those who end up listening to the podcast on Spotify or something, also check out the YouTube video so you can get a visual of it. It's really cool to see it, in front of you in real time. So one of the things I wanted to ask about as well, which is broader, and this is because some of the listeners of this podcast are also builders, and they're trying to navigate this bear market and understand how to create sustainable products for the long run. I know that you guys have a mix of sort of revenue models and processes in place to operate as a team. One of these is, of course, you have, as you said, your DeFi ecosystem with your own native token. But you also have somewhere on your website that you're considering introducing more of a SaaS type model for traditional businesses. So maybe that would be something interesting to explore, is kind of highlighting the pros and cons of each different model, the token model versus recurring revenue from a SaaS type subscription, and how you've been thinking about rolling that out and maybe some of the changes you expect to see from it.
Yeah, so we're considering a SaaS model just because we can make the revenue a lot more quantifiable and we could scale our product offering more quickly that way. Whilst over time opening things up open source. But as far as how we're rolling that out, we're going to have a testing period here in December and maybe part of January, where anyone, even people listening to this podcast, can reach out to the team, can apply via a form we're putting up soon to test the reactor for free. We're going to collect that data and then we're going to push into our SaaS model. But our SaaS model moving forward, it's a combination of Web 2 and Web 3. So there's the fiat on-ramp portion. You can pay with your debit card, or you can pay in crypto. But what that does is every time the user pays for that first month, that stake or part of the stake, if it's team or enterprise, will go directly into the token, and it's staked. It's a proof of stake for all the contracts that are going to be pushed using the reactor, and it provides value to the ecosystem. It provides more security, because if people are just replicating a bunch of rug pulls with their reactor, we can essentially shut their stake off, so they can't do that. But it also provides, like I said, a quantifiable source of revenue moving forwards, as well as different options for different levels of support. I mean, we're going to have the bootstrap or solo version for really small teams, 1 to 2. We're going to have a Teams version where people can actually collaborate on the same screen. So it'll be like the ARC reactor, but Figma, where you can see other people's cursors live. You're going to have shared comment threads, shared whiteboards, and then you're going to have an enterprise version with all the features plus customer support. So we see it bringing a lot more granularity to the whole development process, because we're able to hone in on so many different areas and provide value in every area with this type of model.
I think it could be worth just touching on the token utility element there, TJ, as well, and how that kind of fits into the ecosystem.
Yeah, so let's say, Juan, you sign up for the reactor, you get the solo membership. You pay $99 for your first month. Well, at $99, it's used to stake ARC. So we stake ARC, and what it does is it validates your contracts. It's like a validator. Let's say that you push out a lot of awesome code, but your buddy joins. He gets the same membership. He puts out a lot of rug pulls. We can actually cancel his membership. So he can't access the reactor anymore because we pause his stake that and his wallet is blacklisted. Or we can make it more and more expensive to use the reactor. There's a lot of different paths we can take. But the idea is to provide a need to stake the token, as well as to, like, let's say you're making 90 to 100 pushes a month, provide a discount for doing those pushes. So it would essentially be like the more ARC you stake, the bigger of a discount you have using the platform every time you push the mainnet.
Got it. So
It's
it's like
probably
a. Go ahead, George.
No, I was going to say it's probably worth noting that the whole ability to blacklist wallets and to pull is more of our sort of area of responsibility towards the greater space than a centralized control we're trying to have over everyone. But there's an added responsibility from our end that we know that exists with a product like this. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's something I want to touch on. Obviously, everybody is concerned with striking the right balance between implementing safeguards to at least make it difficult for bad actors to proliferate, right? While at the same time adhering to the ethos of decentralization, permissionlessness,
Exactly.
and all of these things. And so one of the things on the flip side of these controls that you've mentioned that you want to implement almost as like a moral duty is the idea of it still, despite being no code, being open source and therefore not trapping customers right into something they can never essentially get out of otherwise, which is more of what you'd see in Web 2. I know that's on your website somewhere, so I'd be curious if you could talk about maybe how people might think about no code Web 2 platforms versus no code with what you're rolling out.
Yeah, so I mean, no code with Web 2 platforms, it's definitely a lot harder to track what's built, because I mean, Web 3, obviously, once the contracts are out there, you can always look at the blockchain, you see the point of origin. Oh, deployed from ARC Reactor. So it's easy to see if the guy's rug pulling or he's putting out malicious contracts. Yeah, I mean, that's the main difference. But as far as like the centralization slash, decentralized argument, we definitely want to be on the side of decentralization, whilst at the same time providing a little bit of security for people using the reactor. Because, with the government regulators not really understanding the space that well, we don't want them to look at ARC as, hey, I mean, you guys just made it 50 times easier for hackers and people rug pulling to put out their malicious contracts, their, phishing contracts, get in your wallet, whatever it may be. We want them to at least think that we're, putting effort into safeguarding the space.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. And it's obviously something that's important to think about. But I think my question was more geared towards the commercial side of things, right? So maybe somebody who is used to using no code platforms in Web 2 and the idea of all of this being closed source, and you use the keywords vendor lock-in, right, on your website. That's more what I was kind of curious about, is for somebody who that's what they're used to, that's what they're coming from, and let's say listening to this for the first time, and they're like, okay, what's the advantage of open source with a no code platform? Let's talk about that and how that affects a customer's ability to move around freely, how you think about retention relative to that, and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a separation between how much value we provide and, how long they want to stay on the platform. Because, coming over from Web 2, you're kind of locked in, like you were saying. But once you create contracts with ARC Reactor, you can still, like, we can see the point of origin by which they're deployed. But if someone just wants to take it out from there, like they don't want to use the reactor anymore, we don't have a choice to stop them. So, I mean, for some, they might look at that as that's awesome. That's nice. I can use the platform for a month. Afterwards, I don't have to use it anymore. So, from the
Yeah, I
user
think
perspective, that's great.
yeah, I think also with respect to some of our, I say competitors, but kind of vaguely similar projects out there in the space, because actually there is no one that does anything like what we are going to do. A lot of them operate from coding templates, or they have this vendor lock-in, and you're kind of tied into certain agreements. And there are barriers, even if you use their solution, how far you can actually go with that code once you deploy it. And I think one of the things that we want to emphasize is that with Reactor, you can really build whatever you want. You can do anything with it. Like it is that one-stop collaborative tool that you can pull code from any place and deploy it to Phantom.
Hmm. Anywhere else,
It's
any
important
EVM
to
chain.
us. Exactly, it's important to us that we aren't holding anyone back. It's all about breaking down barriers. It's all about making crypto accessible and easier for developers and users. So, yeah, it's an important part of kind of what we're looking to achieve.
Yeah, but with that, providing a better way to self-police. Because like Block Explorers right now, you look at the contract, it shows it line by line. But in the future, a Block Explorer powered by the reactor, it could show the code in a diagram where the dependencies are broken, the audit score according to our AI on what attack vectors are likely to be there. So we wouldn't be blocking people from pushing out these contracts, but it'd be a lot easier to understand if people are pushing out exploits or rug pulls waiting to happen.
And
Yeah, so
sorry, George, go ahead.
I was just going to say a real-time example for us would be we had no names mentioned. We had an audit carried out on a farming contract that we had, and it all passed the audit, no problem there. And this was a relatively well-known forked project or part of, and we required a backup audit for an exchange listing. Just a due diligence. So we had to get another one, and that audit showed up some weaknesses in the smart contract that the first audit team hadn't picked up. And when I sort of spoke to the second audit team and asked them what the process was, they just alluded to it just being a few developers going over the code, just line by line, going down it, seeing if there was any sort of breaks. Well, it's human error. There's huge amounts of scope for human error there, and I was a little bit shocked to think that that could happen. But as TJ's highlighted, this is the computers, the algorithm doesn't get tired, the reactor doesn't get tired, doesn't make mistakes on that front.
It shows you
so,
the errors right there.
Yeah, so I mean that would have saved us a lot of money for that second audit.
A lot of other projects too.
Yeah, so worthwhile.
I'm curious, since right now in terms of DeFi and crypto, we're somewhere between still being a secluded and very difficult to access niche and being mainstream, right? As a whole,
Mm-hmm.
there's still obviously things like for the mainstream trying to navigate a block explorer it's a ridiculous task in my opinion, at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in between now and when things are as simple to use as logging into an email or however far out that is, right? Do you see Reactor potentially being a solution for people who have a degree of knowledge of DeFi and crypto, but aren't necessarily developers and wanting to understand the contracts themselves and being able to, for example, pull something, look at where it's broken and make an informed decision based on that? Or do you foresee this being, a product that is strictly used by developers looking to fork something and start something else?
I see it being for both. I mean, on our roadmap, we have a dApp marketplace. So in the future, when people are building with the reactor, they can also host their dApps in our dApp store. I know I said dApps a bunch of times now, but and you can access it directly from the dApp store. And on the dApp store, there'll be that block explorer that shows the code visually. And I mean, we're going to be providing value from the user side. Like, let's say You just want to access the project from like a GameFi perspective. You don't want to be a developer. You just want to have fun. You put some money into some ETH and you get going, right? You're still going to derive value from knowing that that project is secure and hosted on our dApp store versus just playing any random NFT game out there and, you know, potentially going to a phishing website, potentially just losing your money in general from the project being a rug. But yeah, I mean, I see value on the user side that doesn't want to be a developer as well as the developer side, because it's easier to, like, if you think about it like this. So every time a project's uploaded to the reactor, we do the whole block exploration process, but we automate it. So instead of line by line, it's all understood by our computer algorithm or by our algorithm, and it's mapped. From there, I mean, for us to set up a block explorer, it's just setting up a URL where anyone can look at any contract on any EVM chain and see the diagram. And then from there, it's showing errors in the code, which, as you saw, we can highlight those. And then just building the platform to where people would be able to launch their dApps and then have the Blog Explorer sit side by side with it. So I know it's kind of like a really convoluted answer to your original question, but it's providing value to developers as well as the end user, because if the information is more widely available over what the contract looks like and what it can do, it's a lot less likely that people are going to be exploited.
But also,
Yeah, I mean,
it picture paints
George, you and
1,000
I,
words.
are talking at the same time every time. Please go ahead.
It's
We're
going
George,
to be a nightmare for you to cut this. It's going to be a nightmare for you to sort of edit this. Sorry, but I've got a friend who I tried to coax across into Web3 who develops in Web2, and he looked at it as the sort of the future and the sort of the holy grail to move across, but he was too scared to come across, even though the languages there are some similarities of what he was using. But when I showed him the reactor, sort of the way it was mapped out, it like you said, it just made it so much clearer to him. It made it so much less obtrusive and scary to look at from that sort of step from Web 2 to Web 3. So I think there'll be, to touch on the element of the question that you asked, one of them is that there'll be a huge ability for crossover to happen a lot more seamlessly with a tool like Reactor.
Yeah, I think it's also really interesting what you mentioned, Juan, about kind of where crypto is in general and kind of what stage we're at and where we're headed. Because, you know, thinking about it fiscally, I think it was TJ $14 billion in exploits last year in crypto.
Yeah.
And then you think about the amount of time that any project of any magnitude might be paying Solidity developers. And in theory, you know, for the audits as well, some of these audit companies who take months to do a job and or not always do it too well. These are all markets that we're tapping into and looking to pull into one with more efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be a great ride from here.
What I'm really interested in is, and I'm always interested in this side of thing, like revenue business operations and really creating a product that sells itself, right? Like this hybrid combination you're exploring between a SaaS revenue model that is fiat on-ramp accessible, that then ties into your existing token ecosystem and powers it. Because the models I've seen so far, at least, that are exploring these hybrids, especially for enterprise, onboard an enterprise in a SaaS manner, they're two separate buckets that are two separate revenue streams. They don't interact in any way whatsoever.
Yeah.
And as you said, there's pros and cons to both, right? On the recurring SaaS type model side, there's the predictability and quantifiability of saying, hey, this is what we're going to hit. These are our expectations in our sales forecasts. But on the flip side, you don't get some of the advantages of creating these accelerators and incentives by owning part of the protocol governance token and being able to utilize it to unlock features. So I'm really excited to see, how that plays out and how you guys really leverage those two in combination to power each other rather than one replacing the other or both sort of existing in silos side by side.
Yeah, or creating a barrier too. I mean, when we thought about our model, we spent so much time, and the idea is it's seamless. You pay in crypto, you pay in fiat, we stake for you, or you stake for yourself. Then you access the platform through that stake. And if you want to stake more, you have more discounts. And that's it. You don't have to stake and then pay and then provide your wallet. Like, we want it to be as seamless as possible for onboarding, but also having some of that Web3 utility.
Yeah, that's it's really cool. So, we've talked about the core product offering, the value proposition, how you guys are operating as a company and navigating this space and trying to understand like how can we sustainably monetize this. What else is exciting for you guys? What's coming down the line? What are you excited about for the future?
Quite a
TJ.
bit.
Here it comes. Alpha.
Dangerous.
So we just wrapped up our virtual machine, as well as some back end features, as well as our compiler. And that's a lot, but we're going to be rolling out these products over the next year. And I'll speak to probably just the compiler and the back end for now. But if you saw the video, we took the GMX code base, we forked it, we pushed edits to the source code, and then we deployed it on Phantom in 50 minutes, right? 5.0. With this new compiler that we have, we're essentially providing like a competitor to Remix IDE that's built into the reactor. And we're taking that timeline from 5.0 down to 12 to 15 minutes. So we're making the reactor about 4 times faster, but then we're going to be able to use that compiler as a separate product offering in the future. Like, let's say you don't want to use reactor for whatever reason, you want to develop traditionally but still compile with our process, you're going to be able to compile and deploy your contracts much faster. But then on the back end side of things, which is really exciting, the reactor and our compiler, they don't even require a back end. So our gross margins, as soon as we get a lot of users, they're going to be really high, but we're also able to extend this technology further out. And that's the real dream of DeFi, is you don't have to rely on centralized repositories. You can use the chain as your repository. And in the future, I think we're going to be able to extend our technology to not need a back end to other projects. Or to even normal websites. Like, let's say you own a clothing store or a blog, you want to treat Ethereum or Phantom as your back end. Feasibly, you could do it with our technology within the next 6 to 12 months.
You're taking it on a lot of different incumbents from a lot of different verticals with these plans. I like the ambition. That's exciting.
Well, yeah. And to be fair, like, our CTO, he's extremely talented. He was the main contributor to Node Package Manager, which is a product that all kinds of developers used. He led hundreds of developers at Samsung. He's a 10,000x type developer. And like, accessing the technology we've created just by the SaaS model is just one way it can be used, right? But that technology itself can be used in so many different ways, and that's providing backend services, that's compiling much faster, it serves a lot of use cases. We just have to wrap it slightly differently. So, like, we have a small team, we can't tackle everything like you're saying like that, but thankfully we don't have to. We just have to flex the product slightly in different ways to reach all these endpoints.
Yeah, what I think is really cool about what you're describing is you may even have an idea for how this product is going to be used and by who, but really the flexibility of it may enable use cases that none of us here, or even your CTO has thought of. And that's what's really neat. Kind of bringing the flexibility and the possibility of easily rolling out new ideas and new concepts without these huge technical barriers that exist today. So yeah, I absolutely I think now at the end of this conversation see like the bigger picture, because it's cool what you're doing right now, but where you're headed, I think really kind of highlights what this will all, you know, become, or how these things will build on top of each other. And now in terms of like your DeFi ecosystem and how how it operates, and how is this going to continue to exist in parallel? How are you prioritizing it, right? Because I know you're doing a couple different things. You also, I've seen you've done some things with sports teams and NFTs. So it seems like there's a lot of different kinds of opportunities you're capitalizing on. I'm curious how they all come together at the end of the day.
Yeah. So as far as like our DeFi ecosystem, we see putting our effort into the reactor is the best way to build that. Because as we build the reactor, we're going to attract more developers to our community. And those developers are actually going to be, as well as the rest of the community, are actually encouraged to operate the DeFi ecosystem in the future. So we're going to treat that more so as a DAO moving forwards. And it's going to develop to where our community actually manages these different DeFi products, and they iterate and, you know, create new ones or expand our current offering. And like I said, the best way to scale that is by focusing on the reactor.
It's probably
That's
worth
awesome.
noting that the reactor will be the primary focus moving forward. We have two roadmaps that are sort of interlayered, as TJ said, but very much the ecosystem will fall out the back of the reactor developments over time.
So you're primarily going to see yourselves as infrastructure providers, an infrastructure provider of sorts, with with these things as add-ons, essentially, rather than it sounds like you started from the other side of the spectrum and now you've moved in this direction, right? Is that kind of how it developed, or was it kind of in parallel?
Yeah, no, I mean, we definitely started from the other end of the spectrum. I mean, it's actually a hilarious story, you know, how we started that way. But like, because when we originally brought on our CTO, we didn't seek him out. We didn't know he existed in general, but we had a ad up for a junior dev position, like just a normal junior developer position. And for whatever reason, he felt a reason to apply. He applied. You know, he just worked hard for a couple months until, you know, he realized that he wanted to be a part of this team. And once he was fully 100% committed, he's like, yeah, I have this research paper I published. Yeah, I have ideas for this product called the reactor that can generate source code via diagrams. I have, you know, a vision for this. Like, let's build it here. And yeah, I mean, we started as a normal DeFi company, and now we're moving towards that next level.
It's probably worth noting that the reason Henry is like this is he's ridiculously humble and the complete opposite of blowing his own trumpet. So we had to pull the information out of him.
Like George.
Yeah, just like me. But it's worth noting that we with the DeFi ecosystem, we looked at that as a way to break down barriers, having crypto all in one space. So that's all that we've tried to do from the get-go. And then when Henry sort of started to sort of mention this concept he had, we saw how that whole sort of ethos would fit in nicely to how we're trying to sort of break down those barriers. That's how we build it. And that's how we go from there. So yeah, it's worked. It's a bit a stroke of luck to a degree, but yeah.
What's funny is I'm kind of picturing. Well, first off, it's really cool to hear these evolutionary stories of teams that evolve and adapt and pivot to meet the market's demands and where their talent is most applicable. But what's funny is I'm already seeing the parallel between teams who may use Reactor thinking they're forking something to start with, and then they think they're going in one direction, and then they realize that what they fork now allows them to create something completely new on top of a code base that exists. And then similar to your story, it starts being one thing, and a year later something totally different that was enabled because of this tool. So it's like the ARC follows the ARC.
Yeah, well, and it's like 90% of the time. It's an arc within arcs, arc squared. But so, right now, like you have an idea, you want to execute on it. 95%, like 200% of everything is focused on executing that. People work overtime, they make mistakes, they have to fix them. And it's just difficult to develop right now. But with a product like Arc, you're able to get it done that much faster, that much cheaper. Like you said, Juan, I mean, who knows what they're going to do with that extra time and how much extra time they're going to have to innovate. So
100%, 100%. Well, I know we're coming up on time here. I just wanted to ask you guys for developers that or anybody really that's curious about this and wants to learn more, what's the best place to get involved and get up to date with everything you guys are working on?
So visit our website, arc.market. It also has all of our socials. Our Twitter is DeFi_arc. And yeah, shameless self plug. My Twitter is TJ DeFi. I post a lot of information on the reactor. So if you want to be a little bit up to speed, a little bit more up to speed than the rest, follow my Twitter.
Definitely jump into our Discord. Yeah, definitely jump into our Discord community as well, and our Telegram. We have a really amazing group of I should say investors who have basically been with us since the start of the journey. They provide the absolute backbone of us as a project as well, and we're always discussing the product and basically anything from that down to the personal level with them. So yeah, I'd love to see as many people in there as possible.
Our Discord is awesome.
Awesome. So you got Discord, Twitter, TJ's Twitter, and the website with all the stuff you need. All right, guys. I mean, anything else that you feel we should cover? I know it was a deep dive, but you never know.
Maybe on a second call.
On a second call. Perfect. All right, guys. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for your time today, and yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys continue to progress and roll out all these awesome tools you've been showing us today. So till the next one.
Yeah, till the next
So,
one.
thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Juan.
much, mate.
Look forward to building with you.
Fun.